BlogTalk Radio.
Welcome to Hell is for Children, a Blog Talk Radio program for and by protective mothers with your host, Geerte Franken. So what's a protective mother? A protective mother tries to protect her child or children from their abusive father by many means necessary. Yes, you can call in. Are you ready? Operation Expose continues.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Hell is for Children. This show is on every Saturday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, and the call-in number is 347-850-1243. And just a reminder to the people who are calling in, please call in with a regular phone, so don't call in via the internet. I can't take internet calls as it causes interference. And I would like to thank Bobby Biesinger from World Integrity News Network for providing us with this platform, as it allows anyone who has input on the topic of protective mothers and can think along with us towards solutions to have a voice. And today's guest is protective mother Doreen Ludwig, who is the author of Motherless America, Confronting Welfare's Fatherhood Custody Program. She is highly respected amongst the protective mother activists because she realized that there was a pattern to all our cases and started to follow the money trail to its source and discovered the agenda behind the war on mothers and children, which is what she will share with us today, as well as possible solutions for reform. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Doreen Ludwig. It's my great honor to have her on the show. Hello, Doreen. Are you there?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Oh, okay. Hi. Doreen, let's start with your story. How many kids do you have, and how did you end up in the situation that you are in today?
First, I want to say I am just like every other mother who has a case or protective mother. I must tell you, I never realized I was a protective mother. I was just a woman who was married who left an abuser. It was my choice to leave. It was my choice to stay with him. It was my choice to have children with him. And it was my choice to protect those children during the years that I shared a home with this man, and he never parented, never was alone with them. And the day that I filed for divorce and I chose to leave him is the day that the professional abusers took over my life and my children's lives. And I just want to say I am just like every one of you. There are so many similarities, and I really thought it was just me, but it's not. I went to an evaluator. Even though my husband admitted he hit me, and believe me, the hitting was not the part of the abuse that I worried about because it was small. But I had to get him to say he hit me because that's the only variable that the court system and court professionals, that's all they want to hear about is the hitting. So he actually admitted that he hit me, but it was my fault because I deserved it. Well, guess what? The evaluator believed him, felt the same way, filed the report that I was constellation of mental illness. And as I looked at it, I thought it was one guy running a counseling scam. As I got years into it and more started to happen, and I looked at Wendy Titleman's, this was about 10 years ago, Wendy Titleman had a website called Courts for Kids with K's, not C's, and you could educate yourself at the time on what was going on using her website. And eventually I got hooked up with Liz Richards, who many of you know her. She has a group. I'm not even going to do the letters because I can't remember them. But I have to give credit to Liz Richards for being the one to tell me a lot of the background and the code words to look for. And that's how I started researching So then I started researching, and as nothing, you file ethical complaints, you file appeals, you continue to present the truth in court, and they keep knocking you down. And I finally one day came to the conclusion that writing a book was going to be my only way to expose this. So that's how we got to all that.
So Liz actually has an online library, right? The Liz Library.
No,
you
know what? That's
called?
completely different than that person who runs Liz Library is Liz Gates. And yes, I got a lot of information from the Liz Library. Very good website. There's a Liz Richards of NCJFJ, the National Coalition for Family Court Reform. Anyway, there's a lot of background on her, but she's older now and does a lot less. But she is the one who clued me into the names and the people involved in the federal government.
Okay. So before you get into, all the research that you did, tell us how many children you have.
I have two girls, Elizabeth and Kathleen, and actually Elizabeth is 19 now. Kathleen will be 18 in about 6 weeks. The divorce started over 10 years ago, so they were taken from me in August of 2006. My ex-husband, at the time, there was no sexual abuse, so I decided to fight my case through the appellate process, and at some point, as I found out more about therapies and things that the court was doing to the children, I decided that they were better off with him than with all of the court appointees. And I've had other women call that like Solomon's choice, but I don't know if it's, everybody makes their own personal decisions about how they handle their case. And I can't always say it was the right thing to do, but I never did supervised visits, and I'm not going to because they use them to come up with more fraud. And on a personal level, I said, you're not going to lie about me.
And
it's very similar to what...
It's awful for the children, too, because the children see us in these supervised situations and, they get the impression that something's wrong with mom, right? Because all of a sudden there has to be a supervisor there to have contact, and they must be wondering why that's happening, and that they don't understand what's happening to them, which is really unfair as well.
And they also tell you that you are not allowed to say anything. You're not allowed to reference other family members that the children aren't seeing. If they had a dog, I wouldn't be allowed to say your dog misses you. I'm not allowed to even behave as if I miss these children or anything and anything will be totally screwed against you.
I actually showed my daughter Jasmine the cat that I have, and the cat door, the kitty door, and that was a reason for the attorney to yank the visitation because the supervised visitation because I showed the cat door.
Because you mentioned the life that the child had, and we're supposed to pretend.
Yeah, I was told I can only talk about the weather and what's happening to her in school and no other topics.
Yeah, so it's almost a way of making you this crazy person that they've called you, because only a crazy person would speak to somebody that they had an intimate relationship with as if none of that relationship existed.
Yep.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're controlling techniques, but in any case, let's go back to your situation.
The father's rights and the male patriarchs are heavily involved in the supervised visit centers. They got all the early grants, and they developed them all around their agenda of male control. So you're not going to get away from that if you go to a supervised visit center,
Yeah.
it's perpetuating the problem. But you still need to see your kids, and I do not, anybody who can handle that or wants to make that choice, that is good for them.
Mhm. So, but in your particular, in your particular situation, your kids were taken 10 years ago, and there wasn't so much child abuse going on, as well as domestic violence in the home between you and your ex. Am I getting that straight?
I was a full-time stay-at-home mother, and when the youngest one was 1.5, I went to an exercise class for 1 hour, and when I came home, he had given the daughter hot sauce because she was crying. And from that day on, I never left him alone with them. So they had been babysat by a neighbor more frequently than they had been babysat by him.
Right.
So you can't be an abuser when the protective mother is there 24 hours a day.
And let's also make clear to the audience that when a father hits a mother and the children are present, even when they're not present, they feel it. But if they are present, they see it. That is child abuse as well.
Yes. Also, what women don't realize is that when they get a divorce and there is a custody order and he gets time with them, all of a sudden, you have no power over his behavior. And when you're in the marriage or the relationship, you have a lot more to say about how he treats the children. Mm-hmm. And I find a lot of women that will put up with some of his abusive behaviors and, chalk it off to typical male behavior when it is directed at the children. That is what gives the women the strength and the ability to say, this is not good. And that's why we make the choice finally to leave and stop putting up with it. And then it only escalates.
Right.
Because if you're in a relationship and you're going, his behavior, you're kind of going along with it. And not that you're endorsing it, but it's there and you learn how to adapt to it and how to protect yourself even against it. But, the minute that you enter a courtroom and they give him some form of custody, you have no ability to protect those children.
Yeah,
and that's
it's
why
only
a lot of the women...
Yeah.
That's why the custody switch, what we call the custody switch, is when he gets full custody. It doesn't occur right away. It occurs after time, as you know.
Yeah, it's a gradual process, and they have the Fathers' Rights Group have a handbook of hate in which they basically educate abusive fathers on how to do this gradual process by accusing the mothers of parental alienation, and then first they get an increase of custody, and then another few issues occur, and then they get more increase, and eventually they get full custody. And then the mothers are put on supervised visitation, and then they start messing with the supervised visitation until the contact is completely terminated. That's basically, in a nutshell, the way it goes down.
Yes, and unfortunately, the court people are also trained in how to do that, lawyers and psychologists.
Yeah, so it's so the interesting thing about having you on as a guest is you're one of the moms like me who is not going to stay stuck in the trauma to the extent that we're disabled to figure out what the hell is going on. You basically said, wait a minute, I'm seeing this happening to me, I'm seeing this happening to other mothers, what's going on here? And you started looking what the pattern was and basically following the money trail by educating yourself on the information that was out there. And that's kind of what, makes you very courageous and I have a very courageous protective mother, but also someone that I respect a lot because you had the ability to, to kind of put the emotional thing on the side and just, stay with it in terms of, intellectually researching what is the agenda behind this scheme that you find yourself in, the parent trap, as some people call it. So I'm curious to find out what you discovered as you started delving into that money trail.
All right. Just a few words. It's how I deal with life on an intellectual level. It wasn't the first. My mother kind of threw me out on the street, so it wasn't the first time that I was without resources and had to pick myself up. I also, at some point, said to myself, I cannot have the children come back to me and me be devastated. I have to rebuild myself so that the day that they do come back to me, so that I am a functioning person who they want to be with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And I understand all of the mother's trauma, and it's the most horrible thing, but somehow I have a lot of will. I'm what they call a Spitfire, an Irish. I understand, but I just, my prayer is for every single mother out there to somehow find it within themselves to put their children in a safe place and compartmentalize what has happened to them and somehow find the strength to somewhat rebuild your life somewhat on some level.
Now, in my particular case, I cannot put my daughter in a safe situation, and a lot of the other protective mothers can't either. But it's very important. The point that you're making is really important, because if you are capable of working through the trauma and pulling yourself back together to become a functional human being again, the most protective mothers lose all their money and their house and support from family and friends and find themselves isolated and devastated. Okay, so now you're in this devastated situation. You must pull yourself together no matter what. Get the help you need, because eventually those children will come back to you. And at that point, not only do you have to be together and fully functioning and stable emotionally and mentally, you also have to help them now recover from the trauma. So you have to be that role model, and you have to be their mentor in how they can heal themselves. So you must first heal yourself in order to eventually be mom again and heal them from the trauma that's been inflicted upon them by the system and their abusive fathers. Yes.
So us women have a lot of work ahead of us.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So let's talk about the research. So I actually posted on both of the Facebook pages, the Mothers Against Court Custody Abuse and the Motherless America, that another mom started up for me. So I posted links to my MacAbuse.org website, and I also posted a link to a wiki page that I had done in 2008, and it has a nice outline about the research. So if you go to my MacAbuse, there is a tag that says research, and any research that I am going to reference is under there.
I just want to I want to give the listeners the exact spelling of that website, which is MACCABUSE. So MacAbuse with 2 C's, and then it's .org.
And then you go under research, and you'll see I've posted everything that I mentioned in the book and things that have come up since then. So let's talk about how it appears that when you're in court, something's going on, and it all appears intentional, and it appears that the lawyer and the judge and the psychologist or whoever the appointees are, they're all sort of working together. It comes across that way to you. So what I found out is they have something called Fatherhood initiatives, or the Fatherhood program. And in my book, I go into the different. There's a religious group that started it, and the fathers' rights groups. I won't even go into father's rights. I'll assume you all know them. They're on the websites. It's a very hate-filled area anyway. So they sort of all got together along with the AFCC, which is the Association of Family and Conciliation Courts. They started in California. One of the people that started it, Mayor Elkin, was a big father's rights person. So these three groups, religious, father's rights, male patriarchy, and the court profiteers, all got together, and they eventually got federal funding, acting as if it was going to be a program for minority black men, because they created this propaganda that all these African-American women were just spitting out all these children, not getting married, and sucking up the welfare. So the welfare started a program to force fatherhood. That's what I call it, forcing. But we know that it's really a program that is meant for high-income white men to avoid support through gaining custody, and also to continue to abuse the women and children in their lives. Welfare has different, they fund it through, you're allowed to put TANF money, which is your block grant, your welfare grant. You're allowed to put like children and youth money towards fatherhood stuff that promotes marriage and fatherhood. The support office gets separate federal money, and although some documents say they're not supposed to use it for appointees, they use the support budget for running some of this stuff. But there is a separate grant that is called the Access Visitation Program, and it's $10,000 a year is filtered through the states to run what they call the court appointees is court service providers. They're making out as if these people are giving us a service. I mean, I have to laugh at that one. It's a service we're getting. Mediators, counselors, the GALs, they have a list of the things that they're allowed to classify in this money. But I want to make the point is this money goes to court administration, and it goes to the support office. The administration runs the support office, domestic relations. Every state's a little different how they run things, but this is money that is given not directly to counselors. It is given to court administration to run the counseling scam, or, you know, the fatherhood custody switch and everything. So we filed a few FOIAs and gotten a few contracts. My problem with Liz Richards was she used to tell mothers that they could turn around their cases by just getting copies of these payments. Well, I didn't find that to be true, and I found that in the 20 years this program's been running, the AFCC and the father's rights people have gotten very good at it, and there really is no way to turn around your case once you've been designated to what I call tagging cases, and somehow they're deciding which cases to do. And it really seems to be the level of abuse. The more abusive he is, the more likely he's going to get these kids. So anyway, we've done FOIAs asking for these contracts, and the one that we got from Connecticut that Susan Skip got for me, it says it's a contract between their welfare department and the judiciary, and it specifically says that they will target divorced people with high levels of high conflict. So that means if you've got abuse, they're targeting you. If he's filing contested custody, because most people don't contest custody. They come to some kind of agreement amongst themselves. They know what goes on in the house, and if he's filing contested custody, he's going to get those kids most likely.
85% of fathers who fight for custody get it. Is that a correct number?
I believe that nobody really knows. I believe it's a high number. I believe every court jurisdiction runs differently. Every state runs differently. I know that PPC in Tarrant County, Texas, has determined that it's 98%.
Okay, and then out of the 98% of fathers who fight for custody, there's 85% of them are sexually molesting the children, and 75% are abusive to the children in other ways. Those are the numbers that I've seen in the research on the Leadership Council website.
I'd say they have a pretty good handle on it. I still would say that we haven't done that high level of a research in order to verify that, but I think the Leadership Council definitely does a fairly good process of figuring that out. Given the limitations that we don't actually audit every single jurisdiction and ask for numbers, but they do very good estimates. I certainly hope they're not all. Anyway, this program, this access visitation, has increased the numbers of the men getting custody, and it has fostered this program. It has fueled it and fed it. It gives the AFCC and the Father's Rights an in to the state legislators. They have trainings. The AFCC has apparently 4 conferences per year, one or two in Washington, D.C., where they all get together and they promote their agenda, and they have workshops on parent alienation, and they try to pretend that they're a legitimate organization, and meanwhile they're promoting all of this ideology. I have the Office of Child Support Enforcement, the federal office, runs this access visitation. And on my website, number 15 down in the research is a report called HHS Report, a collaboration for states' strategic planning guide. It tells the states how to get together judges, lawyers, court administrators, support office administrators, mental health people, father advocacy groups, which we all know as fathers' rights groups, and the domestic violence people, and get them all together and decide how to run this court service provider scam, where they appoint people and they force the parents to cooperate and get along and co-parent. So in Pennsylvania, I found the report that's called Changing the Culture of Custody in Pennsylvania. And when I read this report, it says that, it doesn't say women, but it says certain parties file PFAs and make allegations of abuse in order to gain the advantage in custody and divorce, so that will get the house and children. This is the type of ideology they are promoting at every level. It's in their training materials for judges. It's in their workshops. And like I said, when they get legislative money, it's right there in the legislation. So they have those enormous networks. I think all the women kind of know that, but that's what we're going against. And it's all overseen by the Federal Office of Child Support Enforcement. And it's all done under this promotion of that men are good, children need men, women need men. I have even been given a report that is called Fathering After Violence. This is a report that was done 10 years ago by the Office of Violence Against Women. And I was given it by a mother who went to one of the visitation centers cited in this report. And this report says that although half of the people that were there to be supervised were mothers, and they were mothers who had been abused. They weren't necessarily abusers. But this report was going to center on it was going to focus solely on fathers and how to get them better so that they could get custody. And its main theme was that we all benefit from having this man in our lives. The mothers and the children benefit from him. Now, I'm an abused person, and the truth is, if he was not abusive, I might have something to do with him, but the real truth is I need him out of my life, and he needs to be, and anyway, this program is giving him all the power that he needs. It gives him more power. Like I said, it gives him more power than he ever had when you were married to him.
Mm-hmm. I actually had talked to a mom on Facebook yesterday, and she was saying she was going to her local office to get help with her custody papers, and the program was actually called she had to go there as protective mother, but the program was called Fathers, Help for Fathers. There
Right.
was no other type of program for her to get help. So they're blatantly.
So she actually
even
got help from them?
Programs.
Did she feel that she got help from them?
I haven't talked to her since then, but she had to go to this office, and it was a father's rights office, and that was the only thing that was available in terms of for her to get to try and get some kind of contact with her children. It's bizarre, you know.
Yes, they all come under the fatherhood tag, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
We are very suspicious that they are treating women differently than men. So I'd be very curious if she actually gets help and how she gets treated.
Yeah, I will be very interested too. But I was just, appalled by the fact that they even call the office that way. You know what I mean? It's like there's fatherhood funding, there's fatherhood programs for fathers to get to see their kids or get help to get custody of their kids, but there's no federal funding of mothers. There's no federal funding of children. So this by itself is pure discrimination.
Yes. And it's done. It's a patriarchy. It's done to keep him in control of the family.
Yep.
And like I said, I've already proven through the research that the Office of Violence Against Women is going along with it. And there's a guy, Ron Haskins. He's one of the early people that was a staff member of Congress, and now he works with this Casey Foundation. And this Casey Foundation was set up to be for child welfare, but it's an endowment. But it's been taken over by the patriarchy, and I found that my state's domestic violence group, Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence, had a conference with this Ron Haskins, funded by Casey, in order to figure out how they could get marriage values in divorce and support. And they basically diminished the impact of domestic violence in saying that, well, it's good for children to have these men in their lives, and that some level of violence is okay. And as we all know, they do not encourage us to leave, and they do not support our right to leave entirely. They support his right to have access to those children at any level that he wants, and we are supposed to go along with it.
There's also an entire academic agenda at the moment through the fathers' rights groups to label pedophilia as normal. Have you seen that?
I did see that. I did see that.
Yeah. So,
well, I suppose for them it is normal. I've got to tell you, I never in a million years expected to get into this whole sexual abuse of children. It's just appalling. I can't even handle listening to Wendy Murphy for very long. Or if I go to BMCC and they start talking about it, it's just emotionally. I do not know how mothers who have witnessed it and been a part of it, I could certainly understand not being able to survive. And I have to commend that you have done so much. It's just a horror. It's a horror for children to be treated as if they are a sex toy or an object to be enjoyed.
Well, this is part of the angle that I kind of want to add to your research is that what I'm finding out is that a lot of the child pornography that's being produced is produced by these fathers' rights guys that get full custody of their children because they can now take all the photographs and video clips of whatever they're doing with their children or what their friends are doing to their children and sell that. I've also heard stories of fathers who are funded by the pedophile mafia through ways of getting legal aid in their custody battles. So they basically get a lawyer to fight for custody in exchange for videos and photographs of sexual abuse of the children. And I want people to be aware of that. If you are listening and you are watching child pornography, you are contributing to that abuse. You are actually part of the abuse. If you want to stop child pornography, stop watching it.
That Liz Richards, when she first found, that is how she got involved in this because her children were taken from her and it was neighbors and she lived in an exclusive neighborhood outside of Washington, D.C. and they were all pedophiles and they were all the original traffickers. Warshak and this group ACFC, Coalition for Families and Children. So that is how she got involved. And the truth is, I found a DOJ report that said there are over 500,000 new images of children every month posted on the web. And I suspect that they're using this Tor browser and that type, the deep web, what they call. It's also, unfortunately, when you have an industry that is not oversought, there's no oversight and there's no accountability, it is the perfect environment for this type of crime to fester. And we all know that children and youth is probably the biggest supplier of these children, even though Family Court, like you said, has a whole operation. The sad thing is that children and youth has an even bigger operation going. And it's often the same judges.
And yeah, I mean,
my work centers on cleaning it up because, as you know, we go to the FBI or we go to certain places, legislators, and we say this is what's going on, and they laugh us out of the room. They want not, well, you're obviously crazy to be talking about trafficking and sex abuse of children. So I cleaned it up, and I don't mention it, and I feel that if you start looking into the judiciary and family court and children and youth, it will come jumping out at you because it's definitely there. But I'm trying to get in under the radar, so it's not a big part of the work that I do, but I certainly know that it's a big part of the industry.
Yeah, I want to expose it, and I'll use this radio show for that. As we speak, there is a huge pedophile scandal unfolding in the Netherlands. That involves the Chief Justice, the ex-Chief of Justice, Demmink is his name. So he was the top judge in the Netherlands for a period of 10, 15 years or so in the 1990s. And around that time, I don't know the exact specifics of his reign of terror, but he basically instructed all the judges underneath him to dismiss any type of case that had to do with child sexual abuse, and he was eventually caught as a pedophile himself. Because his victims were young boys from Turkey, grew up and became adults and came out and started telling the media and, the judicial system, like, hey, I was raped by this Chief of Justice, Demmink. And they tried to cover it up. But eventually, what they found out here in the Netherlands is that the Minister of Justice, his name is Teven, he is actually also involved in my daughter's international abduction scandal, that he was involved as well. And this man is now a witness in the largest pedophile scandal to hit the Netherlands, and it's all going to trial. And the way this is going down, just interesting because it kind of shows how these guys work. Is there's this oversight committee, this international oversight committee in judicial behavior. And so the folks who were the whistleblowers in this case reported the Chief of Justice Demmink to this judicial oversight committee. And what Demmink then ended up doing is he got himself elected on the board of that judicial oversight committee. And as a result, they didn't investigate it. And so the whistleblower said, yeah, wait a minute, that what's happening here? So that the entire thing has now finally gone to trial. Now, this has been going on. This entire process has been happening in the courts in the Netherlands for the last 15 years. And it's only because of people like you and me, the real whistleblowers, that don't stop pushing, that this is finally now coming out, and it's unraveling because it's turning out that a lot of people within the government are involved in this. And the reason why I want to point that out is because if these are the folks that are in charge of the judicial system, then we must expose them. Because this is where it starts. This is the root of the evil.
Are you finding people who are on your side and willing to crack open this Pandora's box? Because if one guy's caught, there's other people involved. People who've been covering up and helping.
Well,
so
what's
I'm
happening here is
that
what's happening here is that the journalists and the whistleblowers who are opening this horrible, awful, evil pit of disaster and pedophilia, these people are getting murdered. There's one woman who was in the Dutch government. Her name is Els Borg, I believe, and she got murdered because she blew the whistle on this within the Dutch parliament. And so it's a dangerous dangerous situation to find yourself in if you try and reveal and expose this. And I'm very full aware of that. But the reason why I am part of being this whistleblower group is that I cannot accept living in a world where these types of human rights violations take place. I will not stand for even one child being abused, sexually molested. I won't stand for it.
Well, I've also made the choice that it's more important to be a good person and a caring person than to protect yourself against being, killed. But I mean, I would die for this, to get this out, but it's still upsetting to me when I hear that reporters and that type of person is murdered. So I was wondering, are they investigating this person's murder? Has this caused an outrage? Because that should really cause a public outrage.
Yes, it's being investigated, and this is all coming out in the media as we speak.
Well, I tell you what, if they kill me, I have the book, and I have a computer, and I have a will, and if they kill me, it's for naught. I mean, it lives. When I published that book, I said it lives without me, and it's been passed on to other people. I'm not the only one who has this information.
This brings up a very important point. I had another mother contact me this week, and she said, I'm really worried that I'm going to be murdered because I am exposing child molestation and a pedophile network that's involved, and I'm really worried that I'm not going to live much longer because of it. And I have all these files here, all this evidence here, and she said, can you take care of these files for me? And I said, you know what you should do? You should go online and Google Switzerland server encrypted. Go online and Google these 3 words, and you'll see that in Switzerland there are companies that provide cloud storage that is encrypted. Now, the reason why this is important is that Switzerland is not part of the EU and it's not part of the United States. It's a neutral country in the world. And if you upload your important files and documents to this server, to this cloud storage, and then give the password to this cloud storage to people that know you and understand what's going on, then if you do get killed, the information can be retrieved and will not be able to be covered up. So that's a message that I wanted to share with all the protective mothers who are in this situation. Try not to live in storage. Yes, Switzerland cloud storage, and then you'll see that there are encrypted ones. So whatever you upload cannot be downloaded, it cannot be hacked, it cannot be tracked. And your information, your files will all be safe, and then share the password to that cloud storage with someone you trust and knows what's going on. So if anything might happen to you, anything suspicious, then the information is there.
Yeah, I think the more public that she makes herself, the better protected she is also. But you do have to have a caution. And it's easy to think you're being paranoid, but they're very bad people.
They're very bad people. I mean, I've gotten threatened at my house. My ex actually sent thugs to my house to threaten me about child support, and the cops came, and the cops said, this happens more often than you think. And I said, well, I've reported all of this to the FBI, and they looked at me and they said, you know what, the FBI is corrupt too. I mean, these are Dutch cops, and they were like, they had their answer ready. It's like they were dealing with this more often than I realized. And they explained to me, okay, this is how you install cameras above your front door. And you just film these guys when they come here again. And then once we have the video footage, we'll go after them. You'll get an alert device that you wear on your body. And when you press that alert device, will be there within 2 minutes. And they're on it. They're on it over here. So I want to share that because...
Well, that's wonderful.
And this is also why I'm putting all my stuff online and on the websites. It's all backed up on multiple locations. So people, when they're listening right now and they're thinking of harming me in any shape, way, or form, this is all public and it's all available. And if anything happens to me, it's all right there, and the trail will be easy.
And there will be more
follow.
people to even look into it. If they kill you, that only validates everything that you've done.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth of it, and it will get looked into.
Yep, and like you, I'm willing to die for the cause, and I'm very happy to hear that you have that same conviction, because this is really important. That it's an awful thing to say, but at some point you have to come to this. You do come to this door, as I would want to call it, right? Because you can choose to stand by and do nothing, and then your children are going to continue to be abused. And for me, that's not an option. I'm sorry, but like I said, I'm not going to live in a world like that. So I'm going to fight, and I'm fighting.
Yes, and I care enough about just people in general, not to mention children, but it's horrific that any child should have to go through this.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to make a choice in life to be a better person than what you are. It's not about you. It's a much, much bigger picture. And that's where I am able to actually recover from the trauma, because that I accepted it's a bigger picture and I look at it as a bigger picture. And as bad as things happen to me and my children, we're very small compared to 450,000 images brand new every month.
Exactly.
Exactly.
All those children who are suffering. I mean, it's a huge tidal wave of evil that we are confronting, and we need brave moms like you and like myself, and to expose this. We must go up against this. This is apparently the task that we are called to do by the divine, as I call it. I don't see any other reason. I can't put another another reason for why I find myself in this situation. Right? It becomes a calling.
Yeah, I feel I have a calling.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I joke about it, and oh boy, I don't really want it, but
No, it's not. None of us want this, and our children are. I mean, I try to put myself in my daughter's shoes. It's like, oh my God, imagine coming into the world and being confronted with this evil from age 4 on, right? I mean, that's
I can't
so much
imagine.
worse.
She's such a sweet-looking child. I know that Wendy Murphy says they particularly like blonde children. Anyway.
Yes.
We have a long way to go, but we need people to stand up and say, no, pedophilia is wrong, and we need people to say, there's obviously a supply for this internet porn. It's a huge market, and they're not children who are picked up off the street. And in fact, this DOJ report says these children know who the person doing it to them is. And we need to provide the opposite force to the pedophiles who say, oh, this is perfectly fine, or it's not a criminal behavior, it's a mental, thing, and we need to say this is absolutely wrong. These children suffer. These pedophiles put out that these children want this, and they're asking for it, and
I have a mom right now who approached me this week, and she said, my baby has gotten raped, and the doctors at the hospital have confirmed that, my little baby girl's been raped by her father. The semen is there, all the evidence is there, and they've confirmed it to her, and now they're covering it up. So they're trying to get rid of all the reports.
Yes, they're afraid. I have another mother who's doctor. You know, that's how it starts generally for a lot of mothers. They go to the doctor because there's blood in the toilet. That's what my friend focuses, the blood on the toilet. And the doctor confirms it, and he tells the mother. And then when the litigation starts, the doctor told her, no, we're not witnessing. If you subpoena us, we will lie. And they start destroying records.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that point on, with the litigation, the mother's hands are tied, and she is not even able to get to any doctor that will confirm the sexual abuse.
Yeah, so besides the fighting that we do to stop the pedophile mafia and use the court system to produce all this child pornography, there's also a big moral issue going on here. That's why I just had that, made that announcement to all the listeners who watch child porn. You have a responsibility. If you watch that stuff, you are actually participating in the rape of those children as you watch it. And I want to hold people morally responsible for this. If you watch it, whether it's through the Tor browser or through the regular internet, I don't care where you get that material from. If that is where your mind is at, you are part of raping children. You need to ask yourself who you are and what you are about and what you are contributing to life on this planet and what you are, the impact that you have on the children that this is happening to. Would you want to be that child that's getting raped, that little baby? No? Well, then don't watch it. Because this is the only way, ultimately, that we're going to get rid of child pornography and child abuse and child molestation, is by people stopping this behavior. And if you feel that you are a pedophile, go get professional help. You know?
I don't know. They should be the ones committing suicide, certainly not the mothers.
Exactly. And the children. Let's also not forget the children that commit suicide as a result of this.
Yes.
Let's take a little musical break, and in the second hour we'll continue our conversation, and because it's also a very heavy topic, like you said, it's
yes,
I'm dealing with it. I'm dealing with it on a personal level, and I'm laughing, but I also have to somehow emotionally handle the topic. So let's take a little break. I'll go to the bathroom, cry my eyes out, and come back in about 5 minutes or so. All right. So, hold on for a second while I'm trying to get my, All right. So we'll be right back, you guys. And we're back to Hell is for Children, and we're talking today with Doreen Ludwig about her research that she's done into federal funding of abusive fathers. And so I'm going to bring her back on, and I also see someone's calling in. I have a caller on hold, so I'm going to bring that caller in and see who it is. So... hello there. Who's calling in? Hi there. You're live on the air.
Hello? Gerda?
Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, I didn't. You know what? I was listening. I didn't expect to come in and join. I'm sorry. This is Susan.
Hello, Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Hi. How are you? Hold on. I'm in a good place to. Hold on. Give me a second, so it won't be any feedback on you. Hold on.
Okay.
Well, Gertie, I have not heard Pat Benatar, but how appropriate is that? I had forgotten about that song.
Yeah, that's actually the reason for the title of the program.
I understand.
Yeah, and some people are criticizing me on the title of the show. They're saying hell is not for children, and my answer to all these people that have that kind of criticism is like, look, I cannot say that planet Earth is heaven for children the way things are going down, and we're talking about abused children here. We're not talking about those kids who are having a wonderful childhood, but unfortunately, at this point in time, if I look at the numbers globally, we can conclude that the children who are having a childhood without abuse are in the minority. The majority of children is abused. 1 in 3 children deals with sexual abuse before they hit the age of 18. 1 in 5 boys is sexually abused before they hit the age of 18. And that, to me, is hell.
Hey, Gerda, that statistic on boys actually is higher because boys usually don't report.
Okay. Wow.
That's my setting I work in.
We've somehow gotten into the absolute worst of all of this. Because this is about abuse, and we're talking about the sexual child abuse. To me, I always say it is the worst of the whole thing. But we need to get this dialogue out to the general public, and we need the general public to be on our side and to understand what is going on in the courtroom and how So my feeling is to get to the general public, who a lot of them are repressing sex abuse, I suppose. We need to clean it up and make it palatable is what I call it, so that they can digest it and say, get involved. And anyway.
Great point. Hey, Susan,
yes.
you have some background audio going on. Are you in a car?
Okay.
Are you driving or something?
Yeah. So,
all right. So,
do
you mind if I could shall I just go on with Doreen and you?
Go on with Doreen. I just wanted to listen.
Do you want to say anything?
I'm hoping that you discuss the way we could get people to know about this is that where their tax dollars are going, and there's got to be some people just cannot deal with the situation, or some people just don't care about the situation. But the bottom line is that this industry is driven by victimization. There won't be any money for people who are in this industry unless there are victims. So there is a need of victims and victimization to create a profit stream. And the objective function for this industry is victims, because they will not make money unless there are victims. And I think that's
and really the child porn is a huge income generator, and
huge.
It's organized crime.
So
Susan has a
fantastic
fantastic mind. I love Susan's mind, and I love her input. And anybody who has input into interpreting this or any ideas, I am more than willing to hear them, because I might not understand it at first, but I try to take it away, process it, and incorporate it into what I know. So Susan gave me a great line, which is, the abuse is needed because it generates the income. She's absolutely right.
So
this
before
whole
we
program,
get
the
into
funding,
this,
it's all about just keeping well-paid people well-paid. So the government program does that. We know there's a whole underworld that – I heard the Pope say this. Our systems are corrupt, and the corruption runs parallel to the system. So the corruption at its worst is the pedophilia and the internet pornography using our children. And it runs right alongside and right inside the structure, the government structures that are set up and supposed to be legit. So it's just a different way of looking at it. And I do feel that if us mothers, if we can get rid of the emotional turmoil and the devastation, and we can start to talk about it to people without falling apart, that we can get them to listen. And we need to do that.
There's 2 million of us, so if we all actually, start talking about it and stop feeling embarrassed or afraid, then we can be much more powerful and get over this collective fear. And that's really super important. They control us through fear. It's a Nazi technique. It was developed in World War II, and we need to become aware
and
of
all
this.
that.
Yes.
They know exactly. They know exactly what they're doing when they do their false reports, and they know exactly. They call you crazy because they are going to make you crazy.
That's also a great point that you're bringing up as part of what Susan called that victimization industry.
Yeah.
Once they take your child away from you, you're going to show up in court and you're going to be emotional about it. And as soon as you start crying, they'll say, see, you're crazy. See, you're traumatized. See, that's why you can't take care of your children. I've also heard mothers say, I didn't cry, and that's why they said I was crazy.
Yes,
because
I was told that by a psychologist also. Oh, well, your problem is they'll find anything to use against you. But we need to tell the public that this is happening in a clear, concise way without having the trauma be the dictator of how we say it. We have, as far as I know, there is a government-funded structure that is supposed to be the voice for us, domestic violence groups. And they don't speak for us. And that is because when they originally got their government funding, they had a whole discussion of whether they would include children or not. And they decided not to include children in their funding structure because that would interfere with children and youth. And they felt that they would be taken over by children and youth. And they were more worried about their funding stream. Now that Connie Valentine has organized a group, and we have Barry speaking out and other people speaking out on our behalf. The domestic violence groups are saying, oh, there's money here, so maybe we'll pretend that we're going to help these women. They haven't, as far as I'm concerned, they haven't said anything about us all along, and they still do not stand up and say that abusive men are bad for children and should not get custody. Or, that and they even to say that supervised visits don't heal them. If you have a man who wants to have sex with his children, it doesn't matter. That's what he does, and you can't stop it. And he's not going to rape the child in supervised visits, but the minute he gets alone with that child, he's going to do it again. And we need to start to realize that, and we need to say that's what's going to happen. And he's not going to get healed through these supervised visit centers. And if we don't go along with it, we're taken away because we won't shut up about it.
I remember when Jasmine was deported on the day of her deportation, I called Marin County Child and Family Services, and I said, well, I'm sending you 6 reports with expert evidence of child abuse and child molestation by the father, and I would like you to investigate that, And so they actually went to his house, and first he didn't let them in. That was interesting. So they reported to the mediator of Marin County Superior Court, well, he's not letting us in, so we can't. Our findings are inconclusive. In a sense, that's of course ridiculous, right? Because in any other case, they haul the children away, but in this case, they just said, well, the father's not letting us in, so we can't have access to the child. So eventually, the father did let them in, and they called me afterwards and said, "Well, Jasmine was playing on the floor, so she's not getting molested. Goodbye." This is how it went down, and it's then they supposedly interviewed her, but it was in the presence of her father. Now those are not sexual abuse investigations. There's nothing about that has anything to do with a sexual abuse investigation. You can't investigate a child in the presence of the perpetrator.
I spoke with a woman from one county away from my county, Cara Ott, her name is. And her two boys at a young age were molested by the father, and the local children and youth actually did take them away. And so neither the mother or father saw these children for half a year while they investigated. And they concluded that the father had molested these children. And she had a juvenile hearing. The juvenile court gave her full custody, and she moved away to another state. Well, the father got an attorney and appealed not the decision of sex abuse, but being listed on the sex abuse, the list that they keep. And he did not appeal it to a higher court. He appealed it to a lateral court, which happened to be my county court. And that court overturned it. And then after a year and a half of these children being safe, she received an order in the mail to bring them back to the original court, and they were handed over to the molester, and family court refused to allow the proof of the sexual abuse of children. So my point in that is telling you that it doesn't even matter if children and youth was legitimate, and we know they're not, even if they are diminished in family court, they're not allowed to even witness. But the truth is, sexual abuse of children, even if it's a father, should certainly be investigated by crime. There's a group called Protect, Protect, and they explain how parental sex abuse is done by children and youth and not a crime, and that's one of the big failings of the system. So we need to have it treated as all these cases
be handled in criminal court. It needs to go to criminal court, and it needs to be in front of a jury trial. All evidence must be presented and investigated. And another point that I want to make is the financial incentives need to be taken out once a mother goes to Child Protective Services or family court and talks about child abuse or child molestation. That case, at that point, that child needs to be immediately removed from the possible perpetrator until there are conclusive findings that none of that is going on. And so that only can happen through criminal court, through actual investigations of the evidence. In family court, evidence is not looked at, and so family court needs to be, in my opinion, it needs to be abolished.
I actually fully agree with you. So I'm getting, my research is all about an administrative program. They are using the administrative offices of the United States courts and the support office, which is an administrative office. These are not judicial offices. So what they're doing is they're running a judicial program through these administrative offices. Now, this to me says I have a legitimate way to get in there and to say, if you want to make custody administrative, then that's what we're going to do, because administrative has more oversight, and you can even sue on those lines. But so the lines, like you said, the lines of claiming something's a judicial decision when it's not. It's actually an administrative decision that dictates you must give him custody. That is what permits this whole internet pornography to flourish in this environment of no oversight and things like that. So back to the research I have done is we have found something called jurisdictional profiles, where every state is reporting back to the federal government exactly how many cases they have targeted for the increase in custody. And they divide it into each of their labels, you know, if the custody got increased through mediation, through counseling, through supervised visits. And every year, well, in many years, they've put out these jurisdictional profiles. I have them on my Mac Abuse website for the years 2005, 7, 8, and we have one for 2013. I'm hoping that when I go down to D.C. I can get every single year, but we'll see. In 2013, the statistics show a chart that says whether the increase in custody was given to the mother or the father. And if you go state by state, you see some states where they've got 500 fathers, even 1,000 fathers getting increases in custody and 2 mothers. Or they'll say it's through supervised visits and mothers are getting increases in custody. Anyway, I'm doing an analysis of all these figures, but they definitely prove that we have a legitimate reason to say, look, you are doing this and you need to start looking, because every single number represents a case, whether it's Skip versus Skip or Ludwig versus Stepien, it's a case, and you're reporting back numbers of increases in custody. I gave the Federal Office of Child Support a list of questions asking them how they determine who gets these increases, how they ensure state statutes are. I've done a lot of legal asking for the delineation between the legal structure and the administrative structure. If you look at the questions, you can see the corruptions in there. I haven't gotten an answer, but we'll see what they say. But this is our to get the federal legislators and federal offices involved into looking into this.
Susan,
because we have this, I've been working with.
Hold on for a second, because Susan is saying my last name on the case is not Skip, but Till first. And I want to put her back on. I want to put her back on because she's asking me through Facebook chat to talk about something, to add something to what you're mentioning right now. So I'm going to bring her back on. Hi, Susan. Can you hear me?
Hi. I think there's a lot of feedback, because I have a lot of feedback. But I just wanted Doreen to really, because she knows it inside and out, and she might forget it, but
yes.
Not sure about the funding. And
I made that up on the top of my head. Okay.
No. Like you have so much knowledge to share that it's the issue coming up with the DV people, and the fact that they admitted to you in paper that there's an issue. And I think if more people were aware of the fact that they actually acknowledge there's a problem, and how the victimization profit generating scam is dependent on the model that is currently in place, and people have a chance right now to make a change, and it's a small window.
Yes. That's actually the next thing I wanted to say, is that I was working with Leora Rosen, and she's written a couple books centered on the sex abuse, the hostage child, and Beyond the Hostage Child. She is a scientist, and she's validated all of my research, and we've gone beyond, and she lives outside of D.C., so she is the connection to the legislators. And 2 weeks ago, she sent me an email saying they had a conference call along with Joan Meyer of DV Leap with a staff member of the Federal Office of Child Support Enforcement. And during that conference call, this staff member, who used to work in the Texas office of child support under Access Visitation, admitted to Leora and Joan that there were a lot of fathers' rights who were originally involved in setting up the program, and that the program needs an overhaul. Their overhaul is merely allowing domestic violence groups to consult with them. On my website, I already reference it, but there's something called, it's number 15 on the research, Strategic Planning Guide. That lays out how they're going to have these commissions that set up these court service provider requirements for abuse cases. So when they have these commissions, they want to include the domestic violence people. And the domestic violence people, especially the Battered Women's Justice Project, they sell assessment tools where you go in there and you talk about your life and they determine if you've been abused or not. In my book, I have a chapter on abuse, and I go into a little more detail about what I call the classification of abuse system. Also, on my website, I have something called the Wingspread Conference. That's the report where Battered Women's Justice Project and the AFCC, the trade group, and it's actually the National Coalition for Family Court and Juvenile Court Judges, I don't have NFCJ, whatever. And they all got together and had a conference, and they lay out this classification system. And they determined that only the highest levels of physical abuse would even be classified abuse. Now, we all know the great Lundy Bancroft, who's written many books about parenting and abusers, how they parent. Well, he actually had analyzed this classification system when it was done by this person called Janet Johnson. It was done 20 years ago. So 20 years ago, Lundy Bancroft analyzed this system. And the truth is, the bottom line is, it doesn't even look at children. It does not look at his behavior towards the children. It merely looks at how he treats the mother. That's because DV they don't get money for children, so they don't look at children. Custody is an issue not about you and him. It's an issue of children. It's about how the children are going to live and how they're going to be treated, who's caring for them, what activities are going to be like. But these DV people and the AFCC, they're all colluding to make this about you and him and his abuse of you, and it's okay how he treats the kids, he's good for them. Totally omits any proof of sex abuse of children or other things that are going on. Doesn't even admit that he could be doing that. Or, as Lundy Bancroft outlines in his book, men who batter their wives have a high probability of sexually abusing their children. And it's because of their psychology, because they treat other people, they objectify them. Anyway, so I now have the opportunity through Leora Rosen and Joan Mayer and their connections to actually submit an alternative plan to the Federal Office of Child Support Enforcement. I have to somehow in the next couple of months come up with that alternative plan. And I am hoping this plan to submit something that focuses on children and that uses much of Barry's ACE research, and that we would have what is called trauma-informed courts, where they would be able to focus on the abuse of the children and things like that. Anyway, there's a long way to go. And when I first got this email, I've had a history with Joan Mayer and DV people, and I do not trust them. I've been told to trust Joan Mayer, that she has a good heart, but I am begging and pleading for all of you mothers to help me on this and to get behind me, because Barry Goldstein is I respect everything he's done, but he is aligned with the DV people, and that's not a solution. It's not a solution to have a DV person come in and classify your abuse or give their opinion. They're just another court appointee. They don't know anything about what goes on in your house, and they don't even include children. And so they don't understand child sexual abuse, and they don't even care. And meanwhile, they have tons of money, resources, and networks. And we have devastated mothers with no resources. And so anyway, that is my plea. You know, and I really feel that in the next year we can split this thing wide open if we somehow are able to functionally keep ourselves together and organize ourselves as a group and stop all of the infighting. And there's certain women who seem to want to be very important. That's not even, it has to be about making sure that this whole structure gets shifted towards protection and recovery rather than a perpetuation of this profit network. So I am going to go to BMCC and make this whole pitch. I'm going to go down to D.C. and attempt to make this whole pitch, and after that we'll have to see who comes along with me and who fights it. So we've got a long way to go, and a lot of it depends on who wins the election and where that goes. But
well, you bring up a really good point. We got to get the system and the policymakers to go beyond this he said, she said type of classification of divorce cases. It's not about he said, she said, and labeling it as high conflict divorce cases. That's not, these are all cover-ups to not deal with the actual issue of child abuse and child sexual abuse. So to shift that agenda, I think, is really important, and I'm totally with you. But we have about 30 minutes left, so let's spend that 30 minutes on figuring out ways to organize, because you bring up some really good points about the infighting that's happening amongst protective mothers, and I don't want to focus a lot on that, but I do want to say that the infighting is also a tactic used by folks who are in charge, in power. This is an $800 billion a year industry, and the folks that are trying to keep things in the status quo are infiltrating the protective mother scene to try and divide us and split us up so we don't have enough voice and enough power to fight this. And I want the protective mothers to be very aware of this. Let's treat each other with respect. Let's treat each other with compassion and empathy. We are all traumatized, and let's be aware of that as we are trying to organize in a more effective way. This is very important. I really want to ask all the protective mothers out there not to try and force your own opinion or your own ideas and feelings onto other protective mothers, because that in itself is also a form of abuse, and we are already all abused. So we're already all traumatized. So let's be very gentle with each other in this process and figure out ways that we can all collectively make a fist against this evil that we're up against. That is the ultimate goal. So let's not get sidetracked. Let's not get divided. It's much more important that we all stick together, because we need to be that huge tsunami of hope and change, as I call it. And the only way we can do that is if we are actually all united. So even if you don't agree agree with someone's particular angle or perspective on the issue. Let that be. The ultimate goal we all have is to get our kids home and get our kids safe. That should be the main agenda that as protective mothers. So, Doreen,
yes.
in what way do you would you suggest that we organize? Because right now we're all scattered across all these Facebook groups. And,
I have no idea.
There are literally
I am going to go to
BMCC
and see if I can get other people to come up with ideas and maybe even some resources. and when I go to D.C., I'm going to tell Leora and Connie Valentine that I needed to be a little more organized. I would spend every minute of my life doing this, but I'm just limited in the time that I can do it. And at this point, we communicate through, how do we communicate? Through Facebook and emails, and it's not really the best system. You could certainly use conference calls once in a while, or I've heard of a program called Slack that is like the Facebook for business. Anyway, so it's a work in process, getting us organized. But I think the first way to get organized is for people with different ideas to actually accept other people's work and to help each other out.
Exactly. That's my angle exactly. It's just because someone else has a slightly different perspective on the issue doesn't mean we can't stick together. I think that's really important.
And sometimes another perspective is actually very helpful. Everybody comes from a different place. I never experienced my children being physically, sexually violated. I didn't experience that. But I don't ignore that it's going on.
Right. So an open mind
you're
is
even across different countries, and so anyway, we'll get it together. It will happen because I am really dedicated, and I'm not going to let DV people take over. I've done a lot of work, and I'm finally getting something for it.
Yeah, the approach that I have is, I allow everyone to have their own opinion, ideas, and thoughts, and I respect everyone's opinions, ideas, and thoughts, and I have an open mind. I don't know everything, so I'm always listening and learning as we go, and I'm very much of a brainstormer in regards to coming up with actual solutions. So the research is extremely important in that, because once we look at the research and the findings, we can, it's like doing a gap analysis, right? I mean, I teach research in college, and I teach my students how to do a gap analysis. So they have to look at the research, and then they have to state how, what the most perfect situation would be, and then they have to come up with a plan how to go from the current situation to the ideal situation, right? So they have to come up with ideas to go from A to B, basically. And this is kind of where we're at right now. We know that we have the data. You've gathered it. Other people have gathered it. And we know what's going on. So one of the things that I was thinking, just as a little think tank discussion for us right now, is to go to Congress and to present them with these research findings and to ask them for our ideas about having child abuse handled in criminal court. We need some legislators to write new laws around this. I don't know. What do you think?
You're absolutely right. So we have taken some of our research to Congress, and when Connie Valentine has organized a protest in D.C. on May 9th and 10th. We're going to protest on the 9th, which is Monday, and we're going to lobby on the 10th. Leora Rosen has written what we are calling a two-pager, and I will hand that out at BMCC. it puts the research into simplistic form. It kind of comes to the middle. But I'll tell you what, Leora Rosen is very up on the PAS and the child sex abuse. But she's written something that is palatable, so I'm hoping that when we lobby, we will be passing that out. But I maybe, Gerda, I could send you some. I have more research, and maybe we can have you look at that also, and we can do a gap analysis, because that would be wonderful to have a structured plan for getting from this fatherhood plan that gets men custody to a court and a support office that actually helps families, and children.
So what are these conferences that you're mentioning? For the listeners that don't know about these conferences, I know there's something coming up today with the Women's Coalition. They are having a gathering in San Diego, I believe, at 2 o'clock California time.
Those videos that Cindy Dumas has put on are terrific, and I sent them to Leora and said, they could actually take the place of hearings, but they're terrific. They really prove that this is not a problem of mistraining or oversight. This is intentional. My problem with Cindy Dumas is she wants to focus on it only being an issue of women, like bias against women. And I've actually seen a post from Kathleen Russell that said the public doesn't understand my research, but the public could understand bias. Well, anyway, so they've got to get on board with us, and they've got to realize that it is about funding, it is about abuse generating the income, and so if they can't get on board, I don't know what to do.
It's both. It's definitely a gender biased issue, and it's a child abuse issue. All these are all connected.
It was created to be against women, but the truth is they do single out some men. The ratio we came up with based on the jurisdictional profiles is 2/3, 1/3. But we don't. But like I said, when I go by state, there's some states where it's more and less. There's some years. But anyway, the Battered Mothers Custody Conference is run by Mo Hanna, and Mo Hanna started it because she had a case, and she started it along with Barry Goldstein because he was representing women, and they have it every year, and half of the room is advocates and half of the room is devastated mothers. I go there because it's a structure and it's an organized group, and but it's a devastating experience. If you have a case, it takes a lot out of you emotionally. So every time that I go, I actually plan which workshops I'm going to and when I'm not going to go. And so anyway, I let everybody make their own determination if they want to go or not, because it is a lot to handle. So I'll be giving a workshop there.
Hold on for a second. When is the conference?
It is in Albany, New York. It's called the Battered Mothers Custody Conference. There you can find a website on it, and it's May 6th, which is Friday. It starts on Friday. It goes Saturday and half of Sunday, which is Mother's Day, unfortunately. I'll be doing a workshop on Saturday afternoon. I believe their website has a program that lays out who's speaking when. And also this year, Lundy Bancroft is going to speak. So that's exciting because he actually walked away from our group years ago because one of the mothers did the attack on his staff person. You know how the mothers get out of control. But he is back, and he's going to speak, and I'm hoping to bring him into our solution as an expert, and also Karen Huffer because of the ADA, and the ADA is we didn't even go into it, but as Susan says, it's our ace in the hole because the ADA, they're violating it, and it's our protection anyway.
Can you explain to the listeners what the ADA, what that stands for, that abbreviation?
It's called the Americans with Disabilities Act, and there's an amendment that Obama has added to it that gives even more protections. It requires any federal contractor to have accommodations for handicapped, including mentally handicapped people. So as Susan said, all of these court service providers, counselors that are getting federal money are required to have ADA accommodations. That means if you have post-traumatic stress disorder, or if you've been diagnosed as having parental alienation syndrome or some other mental disease, that's what they like to tag mothers on, then they have to accommodate you. Karen Huffer uses it in order to say when you go to trials you have to have special accommodations, like you get extra time, or they have to allow you to bring a recorder, or whatever the accommodations are. But
will it also accommodate legal representation?
Not at this point, but we're at a starting point with the ADA, and we can certainly use it to demand, I believe, that type of stuff. And
yeah,
I
because
but I think most of the women know, but legal representation doesn't always solve the problem, because the lawyers often are working with the judge and the whole entire system.
Right,
and they're lying. Unfortunately, they're taking the mother's money and lying to the mothers.
Right, and this is why I'm suggesting that when we do finally get to speak to members of Congress about policy change, is that we suggest custody insurance, from which all lawyers and all court personnel and all CFS and CPS people need to be paid in order to take out the financial incentives in these cases. And that way, all lawyers, all court personnel, all CPS people are all paid the exact same government wage. And there's no more setting of outrageous hourly fees as they see fit. And we're not up against pit bull lawyers anymore. Everyone's the same. Everybody gets paid the same. And that should also, you'll get custody. If there's a custody insurance program, then that insurance company is not going to want to have all these cases go to court. So that's also very important, right? Because right now the opposite is happening. They want conflict, and they want all these cases to go to court so everyone can make money off of it. So if we take that out, we need to take financial incentives out of human rights issues. Those two don't mix. They are not. They never should be involved in these cases. So these are just suggestions that I'm bringing.
No, I like that way of saying it. Human rights issues and financial incentives. That's very good.
Mm-hmm. Who can we contact at U.S. Congress? Do you know?
Everybody has their own senators and a representative in the House if they live in the United States. So each state has 2 senators, and everybody has 1 representative on the federal level. I will eventually come up. I have letters there, but you're certainly welcome to contact your own people. But at this point, I have nothing organized to offer you to contact them about, but I hope to have it in the next month.
I'm trying to...
So another part of that was Connie Valentine organizes a protest in front of the White House, and it's going to be on Monday, May 10th. Monday, May 9th at 11 to 2 in the afternoon. And we're going to lobby afterwards. So on Tuesday, the day after, the 10th. So Connie has said if you want to set up an appointment with your representative from the House or a senator for Tuesday afternoon, that would be a wonderful time to go there and talk to them.
Perfect.
Or,
so everyone who's
you can
listening
even
right now,
call.
go. Right. Yeah.
We're
go
almost
ahead.
done, aren't we?
We
you
have
can
about
even
5
call your representative and try to speak to somebody about it. But you need to be logical, and you need to speak about the bigger issue. I mean, you can reference your case and what happened to you, but when a mother just goes in there wanting her case solved immediately, they turn off and they won't listen. And it's unfortunate. I want all of your cases to be solved immediately, but we have to go around that. When I go to D.C., I am going to try to bring up the fact that these DV people who are getting this money from the government should be representing us and bringing this up. So I don't know what will happen with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because as far as I can tell, right now they don't. And they are getting money to legally represent us.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that women could be filing that they want to be processed under due process rules and not what I call access visitation rules. Because access visitation rules and fatherhood rules automatically award him custody, regardless of any of his behavior. And due process rules often include abuse issues. Due process. What happened, a lot of this program started because states started passing laws that they had to consider abuse in custody. And so the psychopaths that run this program are very smart, so they figured out they could go through the administrative process to override the law, and that's what they did.
Okay.
So anyway, if we just keep educating ourselves about how this works, and then we can continue to organize a big effort. But I think after my protest in D.C., and anyone who can get there, and once again, I understand the economic issues involved in getting there. So I understand if you can't do it, but that's when we're going to start to do our lobbying effort and see what happens from there.
We really need a source of funding, and I'm putting this out there for all the philanthropists that are listening. We need an office in D.C., and we need to be able to appoint our own staff there to actually bring these issues and consolidate all this evidence and research, and put together a plan of action that we can then present to policymakers in Congress to push our cause, because right now we are protective mothers scattered throughout the United States and globally, and because this is an international problem, and we'll talk on that particular topic in other shows again. But we need to be allowed financially to organize. We have the Fatherhood.gov, right? They get their federal funding, but there's no federal funding for mothers, and there's no federal funding for children. So for all the philanthropists who are listening to this and shaking their heads about that injustice, please help us. We need people like you, Doreen, to be able to, make a living out of working on these cases, so we're not sidetracked with our regular financial responsibilities and working jobs to keep a roof over our heads while we're doing all of this in the evenings and at nights on the side, because it's an incredible amount of work. And we need help here. So if the government won't help us, then someone else please help us in this regard, so we can get the mothers to come to D.C. to protest. And we have the funds to put up organizations to protect us and our children, So
yes.
Go ahead.
No, I forget what I was There's more research to be done, and I can get to D.C. quickly, and Leora is actually down there, and there are people who are on the front lines. A lot of it does depend on the presidential election, and representatives change and some senators change. So a lot of it will be conditional on that. But the truth is, if you have legislators running, right now the representatives are running. If you have a contested race, they're often more available to you when they're running for office, and it's a good time to try to approach people and speak about it. I also feel that at some point it would be wonderful if we could just have like little speaking tours where we go to NOW groups and women's organizations and that type of thing and talk about this issue in a rational way.
Now, the NOW group, what does it stand for?
Oh, the National Organization of Women.
Yes, and they're organized, so that could be a starting point.
Yeah, they have conferences. Every state apparently has a conference, and they have a national conference in June. So we'll do it.
Yeah, excellent.
It's a long-term commitment, and it's for the children. And certainly, yes. Gerda, what is going on over there in the Netherlands is a great piece of research and documentation into how things operate and how they're getting away with this.
Mhm. Well, we'll keep brainstorming and we'll keep organizing, and this was a very helpful show in that regard. So I want to thank you for offering all your research and also sharing your own story. Thank you so much for all the work you're doing.
I thank you for the platform, and I thank all the women listening, and please be good to yourselves and hang in there.
Thank you, Doreen.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And thanks to all our listeners for participating and your attendance to Hell is for Children. And I hope to see you all or hear you all next week on a new episode of Hell is for Children. Bye-bye, everybody.